All right. Welcome back to Light Skin Pod, number 45. And just still rolling along. They're going good. So, if you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Dan Stone.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on with us. We appreciate
thanks for having me.
And start from the beginning. Tell us about baby Dan.
Yeah.
Baby toddler Dan.
So I grew up, born and raised in Duluth area. I grew up on the hill in Hermantown, and good family. 3 sisters. Mom and dad together for a good chunk of time. Little dysfunctional in my family, but grew up in the Hermantown schools. Had a great core there. And honestly, it was that core. You know, it's a small school. Hermantown small school, probably 125 kids in the grade. So I've had the same friends since kindergarten.
Yep.
So that kind of group away from family kind of stabilized my life. My dad, admittedly, I'm not telling any tales out of school. My dad, admittedly, pretty hard drinker, kind of a wild lifestyle outside of the home. He didn't bring a lot of it into the house, but outside of it was pretty rough. And so my sisters and I are real close.
Okay.
Mom's real close. Now, the good news is, fast forward all these years later, we're a real close family.
Good.
My mom and dad are together. I'm real close with my mom, real close with my dad. My sisters and I are all real close. But back then, it's kind of like we kind of stuck together because of the little bit of chaos
For sure.
we had in the house. So, but outside of that, because of that small community, I think it really kind of saved me away from, I don't know, just like what could have happened,
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So, but great people, great teachers, great coaches kind of kept me on, I don't know the best way, maybe on the straight and narrow a little bit. So anyways, grew up in the area, sports kid, great core group of friends.
What sports did you play?
Yeah, so I started out playing everything I could, loved it. If it was anything outside of sports, I wasn't interested. And I'm a little guy, and so I felt like, when I say that, I mean, I'm not very tall, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the strongest. But I loved it. So I was obsessive with it. It kind of took me a little bit more to get as good as everybody else because I didn't have the height. So I played baseball early, and then basketball and football, and then eventually just kind of focused in on basketball.
Okay. Yeah. What was your position in basketball?
Played point guard. Loved it. I did have a little bit of speed. That was an advantage, but I was definitely the littlest guy on the team. But I kind of took that personal.
Yeah, for sure.
So I was
You got to
gritty. I was pretty gritty, tough, and scrappy. But yeah, so that was kind of like my childhood. It was sports. It was, honestly, I use it to get out of the home a little bit, away from some of that stuff. And then, middle school is where I kind of remember it being, maybe late elementary school, middle school, where I remember it being a little bit like, oh man, this is rough. I kind of want to be gone a little bit. Yeah. Again, it wasn't insane at the house or nothing, but it was just kind of toxic. Yeah, I get it. Yeah. And then high school, our family kind of shifted. My dad changed his ways, but my parents were kind of on the outs. And so early high school, so like 8th and then early 9th grade, we had to kind of make a decision who we going to live with and all this. So high school wasn't, it was good. 9th grade was a really crappy year, But again, I had a couple coaches that didn't even know what was going on. They had no clue. I didn't really tell anybody. I don't know if I was embarrassed of it. I don't really remember, but I didn't like people knowing about it. Yeah. He didn't know. He kind of put his arm around me and just really pushed me as a coach. And it kind of kept me away from hating and, all that. So anyways, it was a good distraction. And then and things got better throughout high school. But that's kind of like, in a nutshell.
I get this crazy. So, like, young, grew up in a super rough area. And for me and my brother, even all my cousins, like, sports was that outlet. Yeah. Where we ain't talk about home. Like, all I cared about was my boys on the field. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And, like, my coaches, they acted as, second parent.
Yeah, it was a family for me, too.
That's it. Just locked in. And especially for young men, us where we was from, we didn't have the father in the house. Yep. So we looked to them. When we weren't on the streets for like, give us we want guidance. We knew we was bad and stuff, but if we was gonna get any morals, it's up to y'all. Because if y'all don't do it, we're done.
Yeah, and my dad was home, but he wasn't home, so it's kind of the same situation. And my dad was working hard, trying to make enough money to feed our family. So
what did he do for it?
He was an iron worker foreman. So it was a hard job, tough job.
Up in the range? Did he have to?
He was all over. So he was all over. Like in Duluth here, he was the head foreman on the Bong Bridge.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So hard job, gone a lot, traveled a lot. So he wasn't home. And then when he was home, he didn't really love that world. And so that hard drinking life kind of took over. But yeah, so my coaches were like surrogate parents in a way. And that even though I loved my mom and my sisters, my team became my family.
For sure.
In a good way, in a super good way. And again, I wasn't some outstanding athlete, but that was like my whole life.
For sure.
Yeah.
Them ironworkers, they're tough guys.
So they're no joke.
When I ran for office, I would go to some of their meetings.
Oh, sure.
And man, the way they go at each other, but it's love and they appreciate each other.
A lot of respect for each other.
Yeah.
Hard-working men.
Oh, for sure.
Dudes.
A lot of respect for them guys.
Yeah.
So after high school, what was your plan? Did you want to get away for a bit? Did you want to stick around? What was your thoughts? What were you doing?
Yeah, so in high school, things started getting better. My faith became a part of my high school life.
All right. Tell me about that before we move.
Okay.
How did you get involved with Christianity, faith, however
So we didn't have a real faith background. My mom did as a child, and my dad did too. But it wasn't. And I'm super thankful for it. It wasn't like forced on us. There was casual conversations about it. It wasn't a main conversation for sure. And there was times where we attended some faith gatherings at a church or something like that, or like a local outdoor Sunday school, vacation Bible school. But it wasn't a main conversation in our house. We didn't pray before meals and things like that. So, but when that separation of my parents came along, my dad was. Admittedly, he would say he was desperate. He didn't know what to do. His whole world was falling apart. He knew it was his fault, but he still didn't want it to happen.
For sure.
So, looking back, it was probably, my dad would say it was God at work in his heart, but he remembers going, I got to get my kids to church. And in his mind, that's what he's like, well, I don't know what else to do. Yeah. She's got some faith. Maybe I could get religious and get her back. So my dad brought us to church. We couldn't believe it. We were like, we're going where? So my dad walks into the room and says, you guys got any church clothes? I didn't know what that meant. You guys got any nice clothes? Sure.
This ain't nice?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So we went to a church, driving home. What'd you guys think? I don't know. I was not into it at all. Again, I'm like an 8th, 9th grade kid. I'm 14 years old. And we drive past another church on the way home. And he says, hey, what about that church? You want to try that? I'm thinking, oh, we're going back.
We just got out.
Week 2. And I said, well, I shouldn't have said nothing. But I said, oh, hey, I know someone that goes there. Matter of fact, I play ball with that pastor's son.
Okay, got it.
And so he's like, okay, let's go there next week. And I'm looking at my sister like, oh, sorry, I shouldn't have said nothing. Anyways, the next week we're back. And it was so foreign. It was a small church, maybe 50 people in it. It was just very different than what we had experienced the week before. Very different than my dad's faith background, which was kind of more like mainline denominational. And literally, this is not a figurative. When the preacher said amen, my dad grabbed my shirt collar and said, let's go. We were out of there. And then the next week we ended up back there again. I don't remember the week in between what the conversations were, but it was like, what are we doing back here again? So that began like this little faith journey. I was real skeptical of it. Now, if I'm being honest, I don't know that I was skeptical of faith. Like what was being told to me really resonated within me. I didn't know the Bible. I didn't have anything to compare it to. I didn't have any friends that were like church kids, so I didn't even know anything about it. But I was very skeptical of not the faith part, but everything that surrounded the faith part. And I don't know, that's just in me. Maybe that's just a personality thing, but I was skeptical of the church. I was skeptical of that guy on stage. What's he really want? I didn't really, in the very short time that I had started having these thoughts, because it's only Sunday to Sunday. I mean, a whole month goes by and you only have visited 4 times. So I was real standoffish. And I didn't like the adults. I didn't even give them a chance. But I was just real skeptical of everything that surrounded it. The more I got to know people, I let down my guard a little bit. So I had like this internal battle going on. I was really touched and moved by the faith conversation. I was extremely, I felt very connected to Christ, but very disconnected to the church. And and maybe because I was young and immature, I don't know, I was 15 years old when I was really starting to roll, and I'm going to like a youth group. I didn't know what that meant, but it was on Wednesday nights. There's 3 of us. You know, it was like, it was like church all the time. I was really getting burnt out on church before I even started, but I was very intrigued by faith and by Christ, and more specifically, like by the stuff he was, but specifically like the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, the documents of his life. I was very drawn to it. So I just thought I'd keep church at a distance in a way, and the people. And that's not really fair because I didn't really give them a chance. But I just didn't like them. I didn't have any Christian friends or faith friends. The ones I did know were weird. The adults felt like phonies to me. Again, this is a 15-year-old perspective. They all felt phony and weird. I couldn't even talk about, like, I want to talk about sports, and all you guys want to talk about is God and the Bible. I was not interested in that. But I was very drawn, like, without a push, without anyone pushing me. I'd get home after practice and stuff, and I would open up a Bible on my own and start reading. I didn't understand most of it, but I was really drawn to it. So that's how faith kind of entered. And then that changed my whole family dynamic. The whole dynamic changed. Even though we were still trying to figure out who's going to live with dad, who's going to live with mom, that whole thing sucked. It was really rough. My sisters were younger, so I'm the second oldest, so I got 2 younger sisters. I'm in, let's say, 9th grade, then I've got a 7th grade sister and a 5th grade. That's young, man.
It is.
Dealing with all that. Yeah, so we're all navigating our faith. My sister's a few years older. But it kind of brought a family back together. My dad was just, he was in a really good spot and a really bad spot because of faith. He was in a really good spot because overnight, my dad stopped drinking. I mean, it was we couldn't believe it. I honestly could not believe what was going on. Truthfully, I've told him this, but I thought it was a phase. Like, oh, he's trying to get mom back. But it stuck, right? And I started to see genuine change in his life. But then at the same time, the hard part for him was that faith was revealing things about his life that he was embarrassed by, ashamed of. It was tough. So it was, my high school years were watching, them officially kind of separate and then start 2 different lives. And then it was watching my dad's whole life change for the good, but then watching, there's this interesting verse in the Bible that says, godly sorrow produces repentance. And I watched that. I watched this, like, godly in a good way, but this pain just kind of, it was just like an infection that finally is getting healed. He was broken for years, and if you were asking him today, he's still got some pain from all those years of, all that stuff. So it really changed the dynamic of my family in a super positive way. My dad and I are super close today because of that. My mom and I are still very close. My sisters and I, we kind of all had that in common. Like our faith drew us together. And then now that started informing now some of my next decisions. So I found out pretty quick. I actually had a friend in town recently. We were joking about this. I was about everyone else the same height in about 8th grade, and then everyone kind of shot up past me, so my dreams of being an NBA player were over, really quick. But I wanted to coach. That's what I wanted to do, like, with my life. And I that kind of kept going, but there kept this, I don't know how else to say it, but like this internal nagging, like that might not be your path. But when you're a kid, you're not really, I'm not making career decisions right now, but it just kind of kept drawing. Well, then this guy named Chuck came, and he was hired on at the church to work with the students, 6th through 12th graders. And he, during that really hard, watching my dad's life change, but that, it's just tense at home sometimes. And he kind of took me in, like, he probably is old enough. He's not old to be my dad, but he kind of stepped in as a dad. For sure. Yeah. And him and his wife, Steph, I mean, I'd show up at their, so he's the youth pastor of the church. No invitation. I'd just show up at their house. I just needed to get away for a little bit, right? And so we're watching games, watching Monday Night Football. When that was like the biggest thing of the week was Monday Night Football. I'd be over there all the time. And he was like I didn't use this word. I didn't know this word at the time, but he was really mentoring me, or you could maybe use the word discipling me in my faith, but just like as a young man too. Definitely. It was really great. What does it mean to be respectful? I didn't understand like godly morality, and I hadn't read enough to know anything about it. So he was teaching it to me as we were just kind of living. It was really very cool. But he wasn't like throwing Bible at me as much as he was just showing me how to live as a man. So that was a huge impact. So I got to maybe like junior year, where now it's like getting real. I'm going to go be visiting colleges this summer or whatever. And I had this thought. Now, I know people of faith sometimes talk about like they had this moment. I don't know that I had a moment where I felt like, I'm going to go do this or do this. But here's what I said to myself. I thought, what that man has done for me it's absolutely changed my life. He was there for me in the worst times. He didn't even know I was having bad days sometimes, but he would call me, or he'd pick me up. He'd take me out somewhere. We'd go grab something to eat. After a Wednesday night, we'd head over to, we'd go down to Canal to that. There used to be at the end of Canal, was it a Burger King or a Hardee's down there?
Oh, yeah, it was Burger King.
Burger King, yeah. So we'd go down there, and he would take me down there, and we wouldn't talk about my family. We would just talk about life. Yeah. So all of that's just transforming it. I just thought, well, that's what he does. That's his job. So I had like this moment where I said, I don't really know what it all means. I don't know what it means to be a pastor. I don't know what it means to be a Christian leader. But what he's done for me, that's what I want to do for other people my age. So like high school, middle school students. So that changed everything. My junior year, everything changed. I was very obsessively focused. So I asked him, I said, hey, how do I do what you do? Which sounds like a career, hey. He's like, well, it's not as simple as that. So we started, I thought it was pretty simple. You're doing it. I want to do what you're doing.
Right? Just show me how to do it.
Yeah. So we kind of started down that road, and then graduated high school. And I said, this is before gap year was a word. I said, hey, I just want to watch you for a year. I just want to watch. I want to just follow you. And I didn't know the word internship or anything like that. I just said, that's what I want to do. I think, and you're doing it, so can I watch you? Yeah. So that's what I did for a year. I worked at, I stocked shelves overnight up on the hill in Target. Okay. And then as soon as I got off shift, like 7:30, I'd go home and shower or whatever, and then I'd go right to the church. And he had this tiny little office underneath the stairwell, and we would just talk. And he would let me, plan the calendar events, and I'd be running around doing errands for him, and I loved every second of it. There was none of it I didn't like. It was all new to me. Then he was making me take, it wasn't online, it was correspondence Bible courses back then. So you have to fill out paperwork, put it in an envelope, send it off, bring it back. So I was also learning the Bible. And so he was kind of taking all these pieces of what we call ministry today and putting it all together without it really being official. So I did that for a year, and then I took off. And so it was a great high school experience. Was great. Rocky, difficult. There was the tension of a family breaking up, and it was actually official. My dad's life being changed. There's tension there still, though, because of all these years of just chaos sometimes in the house. But it was honestly my faith that just get me through. I had my friends, my coaches, my faith, this youth guy, Chuck. And it was a huge turning point in my life that I it's one of those things you just don't see coming, but it happens anyway.
Yeah. So where did you take off to? Where did you go to at that point?
Yeah, so there was a million options for what to do next, and I didn't even know what those million options were. I just didn't know. I had friends going off to the cities and all of that to like Bible college and stuff, but I just, I'm not embarrassed of it, but I got some learning issues, and I didn't do very well in school, and even when I applied myself, it was really tough. I had some great teachers that really helped me, but I was getting tutored all the time, and I thought, oh man, if I have to go do all this. But then I thought, if it's something I always hear, if it's something you love, you can fight through some of that stuff. So I was determined that even though it was going to be tough, I was going to head off to Bible college. Okay. And I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. And so you start applying. I started looking at internships, at different churches in the country and all of that. Well, I had a connection in Tulsa, Oklahoma with a great church, school, university, all of that there. And so that's where I ended up. I ended up moving from Duluth to Tulsa. The fall would have been the fall of '98, and jumped right into Bible college. And I'd come from a decently small church, 50 people that had grown to several hundred, and I got thrown into. I didn't know that there were bigger churches. I didn't know that large churches even existed. So I went down there. I attended a Bible college, got plugged in, so I want to serve and go to church and all of that. And all of a sudden I'm at a church of like 17,000 people. College, it's like, and it was just like this whirlwind.
Was it like a mega church?
Yeah, it was 17,000 people on a Sunday.
It's crazy. My buddy,
I'm skeptical than some of the mega churches.
If you're skeptical, I'd love to have that conversation because, anyways, we'll get there. We'll get there. Yeah.
My buddy is a youth pastor at, it's called Second Baptist in Houston, Texas.
Yeah.
36,000 members.
Yeah.
Wow.
On a Sunday,
Yeah.
any one of those services can be 15,000 plus.
Yeah.
And it's insane. And I went to one of the youth group nights. He got married a couple years ago, so we all flew to Houston, and they had 3,000 kids on a Wednesday.
It doesn't have one of them flying Jesuses.
Nah. I mean, they got the wires up there, but we wasn't flying when I was there. But I was like, bro, this is wild, insane.
Yeah, and it felt. It was overwhelming. I'll say it that way. It was extremely overwhelming.
Yeah.
But part of it was I'm even though my faith wasn't brand new. 5 years into my faith, I again, because of my skepticism at the beginning, I didn't even feel like I was 4 or 5 years in. I felt like I was like 3 years in. So I was still like an infant in my faith. So it was a lot. All at once. Huge church. I got involved as quick as I could. I've got like this. I'm either all in or I'm all out. This is my personality. I'm in. Let's go. I'm at college. Let's do this. I'm gonna throw myself into my social life. I literally don't know anybody. I'm gonna meet everybody the first day. And then I'm here. I might as well go to church and get involved. So I got involved working with children, helping out that on Sunday mornings, youth group on Wednesday nights. And I'm single. Who cares? I don't need to sleep. So I'm working. I'm going to Bible college, and I'm super involved. And that, honestly, doing that really helped it feel less overwhelming because I got connected very fast. But it was the mega church thing. It was a wild experience coming from. The first church I ever walked into, I don't remember how many people were there, but I do remember going in high school, and that was about 50. Yeah. So I went from my first time walking into a church that I remember was 50. Now the first time walking into this other church is 17,000 people. It was overwhelming, but it got progressively better. And then I went to Bible college there, and so that was a great experience. Had a blast.
Did you just get theology?
Yeah, it was all theology. Yeah. It was a lot of it. I felt like an infant. Honestly, I felt like I knew, I don't know if it's true, but in my mind I knew I'm the most unlearned Bible person in this whole college. I knew nothing. You've got your Bible, you've got your notebook, you've got the textbook, whatever you've got. And the professor would say, Dr. Whoever says open to whatever, and these people I'm sitting by, boom, flip right over. They know exactly where the book of Obadiah is. I'm like, I'm still using my table of contents. Like, what? So I felt extreme. I wasn't insecure about, but I felt dumb. I really did, which wasn't great because I felt the same way in school. So it was a little bit tough. But I muscled my way through it. And it was that social life that kind of kept me going. Yeah. And then graduated. And within a couple years, that same church hired me as one of the youth pastors on the staff. And so I got thrown into the mega church world quick. Like within 2 years, I was in. Yeah. So I was not just an outsider anymore. I was in.
Pastor. Yeah. You were Chuck.
Yeah, that's it. Chuck was doing it for me, and that was it. Yeah. It was like I felt like I'd made it. I'll be there the rest of my life. It was great, And I had a really great run with them. I owe them a lot because I'm going to be honest with you. There's a gentleman, he's passed now, who's the senior pastor of the church, Billy Joe Doherty. He had no business hiring me. That dude had no business hiring me. I didn't have, when a church that size, you can kind of get anybody you want to come in and do your student ministry, right? Hire anybody. And here I am, a kid pretty young, and I was like, I had no experience. I mean, I had volunteer experience, and I was super committed, but I hadn't pastored youth groups before. Yeah. And so here they bring me in and hire me. He had no business hiring me, but I'm grateful. You know?
So I want to talk about some of this mega church stuff. Yeah. So I grew up at what's Renew Church now, but it was Fond du Lac Community Church.
Yeah, Renew Church. Yeah.
Non-denominational. Yep. Even like to go in. Hey, I'm excited. Anybody that goes to church, like Catholic, Lutheran, whatever. But I've been to a Lutheran church, and it's like you recite. So even me, I'm kind of skeptical of some of this stuff that's more formal. Yeah. The thought of a mega church. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's some good ones out there, but you always see like the Righteous Gemstones version, but I don't know if you've ever seen that.
Yeah. No, I know.
You see some of these things and you think, man, that just seems so far away. So what's your experience with your mega church versus maybe some of these big ones that aren't really preaching the gospel the way they should?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I've been on staff at 3 mega churches. Okay. 3 separate ones. And so that was the first one. And then I won't go through every single one of them, but just to give you kind of a background. So from there, it was just time for us to move on. I had met who is now my wife. We were getting serious. And I moved up the road, only about an hour and a half to Oklahoma City, to a church called Life Church. Senior pastor is Craig Rochelle. It's the largest church in American history today. Damn. So, I don't know. I don't hang out with those guys as much as I used to, but probably butts and seats, real numbers. They had over 100,000 people this past weekend, and 45 locations all over the country, right? And I was their youth pastor there. And then from there, Lindsay and I, so then we were married during that time, and then we left. We felt like this is a huge part of our story and why we're even back in this area, but I love Oklahoma. I've got nothing bad to say about Oklahoma besides the tornadoes and stuff like that, but great place to I mean, I spent 15 years in Oklahoma. It's great. But we wanted to get out of what's been referred to as the Bible Belt because I felt myself kind of leaning into the original stuff I was skeptical of. I don't know if that makes sense or not. I didn't want to be churchy. Yeah. I despised the politics of it and all of that stuff. And so it had nothing to do with those 2 churches, Victory and Life Church, because they were great. I knew both senior pastors very well. Love them both. But I just wanted to get out of that rut of Bible Belt. So we moved to Las Vegas. And I youth pastored in Las Vegas at another massive church, 40,000 people in that church as well, which then brought us to being a part of that church, planting another in Florida on the state line, really. So I know when a lot of people think of Florida, they're thinking Miami and Orlando and all that, but this is far, Panhandle West. It's really South Alabama is what it is. So it's real kind of, this isn't a derogatory term, but real rednecky, Matter of fact, they call that area the Redneck Riviera, is what they call it. So we had connected with this bar, this humongous country bar called the Floribama Bar, and in it started this church. And then so Lindsay and I and our 5 kids moved, and we took over that church in that bar. And and that again was because we kind of wanted to stay out of that. I don't know how else to say it, and I'm trying not to crap on, churches, but I just didn't want to. I wanted to stay as far away from being churchy as humanly possible. I despised
just that mode, that new age mode, or even old school mode of what church is. Before you continue, it reminded me of, so I went to, and we talked about it before, I went to a place called Word of Life, up in upstate New York, and every year you got to go to New York City to do like evangelism on the streets. But they want you to wear a suit and tie, and I'm thinking, I remember telling the guy, I'm not wearing that. He said, well, you got to? I said, no. I said, it if I was the person you were coming to talk to in the suits, I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, you can't relate to people like that.
Yeah, that's not at all. Yeah. I'm already prejudging you. Whether you say you shouldn't judge or not, it's over.
We all do it.
Already. I mean, the only people I expect to come up to me in a suit and tie and start talking is a Mormon. And I don't want to really have the conversation with them like that, you know? So, and I remember the guy said, and it was like a challenge for him of, well, you know what? Your half of the group just wear a t-shirt and jeans, and our half of the group is going to wear suit and ties, and we're going to see who's more successful. I was like, this isn't a competition. Like, it was so weird to me. But we all went out, and we had the best conversations.
I bet you did. Yeah.
And, you know, we just got to coming back, and we asked them how it went, and the one girl was like, we didn't really get to talk to nobody. You know, and it was like...
Didn't surprise you?
Yeah, not at all. You know, but the next day, they end up letting everybody just wear, you know, a shirt, pants, whatever. And sure enough, now you look around and everybody in the group we were with, everybody's engaged and talking to somebody. You know, so I get that mold thing.
I just didn't want it. I didn't want it to be a part.
Sure.
And I.
It's not inviting either.
This is how I go to church.
Yeah.
Just like this.
And I think I probably. I want to say that I wasn't leaning into that, but if I'm being honest, I probably was. Mm-hmm. So we wanted out of there, and we worked at an incredible church, Central Church in Las Vegas. I'm still connected with those guys. You know, they're in the heart of Sin City, and they're doing incredible stuff.
Yep.
And then this bar church that I pastored for years was an extension of that, but I was like, oh, now this is what I'm talking about. There was no church etiquette. No one knew how to act, or how they were supposed to act, right? Yeah. People walking in, not knowing church was even going on. They're grabbing a drink, the bar's serving, and it was the greatest environment ever. Yeah, it was the best. And I felt so at home. I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. I loved it, right? And, you know, there's nothing wrong. It's pretty nice to be able to preach in shorts and flip-flops, you know. So that was a really great experience. And it kept me, honestly, those that moved to Vegas and then to that Orange Beach, Alabama, Perdido, Florida area, that bar, I really felt like kept me away from the things that I despised early on in my faith. And even though now, so from there, this entire time, we had I personally had a hope. Now, my wife is, even though we met in Oklahoma, she's from Minnesota. Found that out on the first date. And she's from the Cambridge, Isanti area, just a couple hours south of here. So we had talked about, hey, when we have a family, do we want to back up north? But man, I'm living on the beach. Yeah, you're warm right now. Yeah, and in Vegas, it's not the beach, but man, it's warm. Yeah. So it was a pretty great life. Yeah. But we just kind of always felt like pulled. I didn't grow up here like, I got to get out of here. I never was like that. I had a ton of my friends like, I got to go to the cities, or I just want to get out of here. They'd go like some other state. I loved this area growing up. I'm an outdoors person. I'm a water person. There's no better place to grow up than this place, right? And honestly, the beach was great. And we loved all of that. But, you know, I grew up on a snowmobile with my dad a little bit. You know, I'm not a great skier, but I grew up skiing, and I loved that. And we didn't have that. My kids didn't. My oldest two saw snow once, but the rest of my kids never even saw snow until we moved back 5 years ago. So but I always had it in my mind, it'd be cool to be back in Duluth, but I'm not. By nature, I'm not a very sentimental person. So I'm like, well, I'm not moving just to be back in Duluth, right? Yeah. And I didn't stay, you know, maybe I'm a bad friend, but I didn't really stay connected to all of my friends from school for 20 some years. Sure. I just didn't. Yeah. A couple for sure. Occasionally, thanks to social media, those, you know, but still it was super,
happy birthday.
It was still super occasional. Yeah. So, but we had all this like, you know, maybe we could do this there. But it was, you know, we'd make a move. We moved a bit. We moved from Tulsa to Oklahoma City, and then back to Tulsa, and then we moved to Vegas, then to Florida. So we moved quite a bit. And every time I was like, oh man, maybe we're heading back up north. And it just never happened. And then when the opportunity came, and there was a transition in the same church that I came to faith in, that transition was going to start to happen, and the conversation happened. It's like, whoa, man, maybe. And it was delayed a little bit, and I didn't want to leave. I'm telling you, this bar church we had going, I wasn't looking for a job, man. I had a great. What was going on was incredible. But we did feel. I kind of felt like every time we had made a move, it was something way beyond me going, I just want to leave, or I don't like it here. I've got great friendships with every church that I've ever been on staff with. None of them were bad leaves. It was all really good, great relationships with all those guys still. But I can see, press pause, the mega church world, how it can be super off-putting to people. Part of it is it really a church, or is it this massive just business? There's the money piece that's really offensive to people. So I can only tell you about the churches I was a part of. That's all I can do. Yeah. But the 3 gentlemen that hired me and I served on their megachurch staffs were, we see them, if you were to watch them, it's almost like they're a TV preacher celebrity, but that's not who those 3 guys are away from there. Not at all. My senior pastor in Las Vegas, Judd Wilhite, is the most normal dude, and all he wants to do is reach people with the message of Christ. That's all he wants to do. Now, they do it in a very, Vegas way. It's extremely high energy, and it draws a bunch of people, right?
Well, and I think as them prosperity preachers, though, that's got to be.
So I can't speak. I wasn't really in. None of those 3 guys that I served with were in. One of them was connected to that world, but they personally weren't in that world. Very normal lifestyle. All 3 of those guys, very normal lifestyles. And what they do, like when it comes to church, as pastors and leaders, they were at the top of, in their industry. They were at the top, right? But you would not know that if you met them. They drove normal vehicles. My first pastor drove around a used, for a while there, I had a nicer vehicle than he did, just but just like a used SUV. And so I've never been embedded on staff in that world before, so I can't really speak to it. But I can tell you, from the largest church in America, Life Church, to these other 2 top 10, 20 largest churches in America, I did not have that experience. I had, these were great, they were all men. They all loved their families. They were all committed to pastoring, really pastoring. I was very fortunate. I felt like after I went to school, I kept going to school. I learned from the best in again, not to use this word, but I learned from the best in the industry on how to carry all that weight and not lose sight of the people. Because that's what I assumed, to be honest with you. I assumed when you're overseeing something that huge, you have to seclude yourself. And I'm sure there are some people that do. But not those 3 guys. Those 3 guys were the most and maybe one of those 3 guys would be considered maybe more of an introverted personality, but you wouldn't know it when it came to church. They were amongst the people. And you could tell that they cared deeply about them. And I've had dinner out in places with those. They're not traveling with some weird entourage and don't talk to me, I'm in the middle of something. It's hugs and prayers in the middle of restaurants, and they're just dudes, So I had great experiences with that, and there's a lot you could critique. Here's how I feel. What you look for, you're going to find. For sure. If you're looking for it, you're going to find it. So even those 3 churches, if you wanted to, if you and I just, hey, let's nitpick, you're going to find some stuff to be skeptical of.
You can do that with any.
Yeah, for sure. But if you can step away from the overarching reputation of mega churches or TV preachers that some people have, at least in those places, you'll find that the heart of the mission has not changed just because they've gotten big. That the people still matter most. That tears are still, staff meetings. Those guys are crying because of the stories of life change that have been happening at the church. So my experience has been really good, but I know not everybody's has.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's good. And at the end of the day, the mission for big churches and small churches is to bring people to Christ.
Yeah, and it should be, and I know that sometimes it deviates. I think what starts to happen is, I just had a conversation with someone about they were struggling in their church, specifically not growing. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the dynamics of it or anything like that, but I think what happens sometimes is, so there's this really cool interaction that Christ has with other church leaders in the book of Matthew, the very first book in the Bible's New Testament. It's an interaction Jesus has with these church leaders, and it was documented. The interaction was documented by a guy named Matthew, and then the book has his name, but Matthew was there, and Matthew was the one they were all talking about. So he's writing, he's like firsthand about like, oh, this whole thing's about me, because Matthew's life was like, none of us would have picked Matthew to be in leadership in Jesus's group. Never. He was what the community called a notorious, disrespectful sinner, and then his friends were the same, and he was what was in the day a corrupt tax collector, very hated, and gotten wealthy off other people's lives. And so, anyways, Jesus is hanging out at his house, and the church leaders didn't like it, and because they wouldn't have picked Matthew, but Jesus did, so they didn't like that either. And he's hanging out with what they call disreputable sinners. That's what Matthew wrote down. Jesus was hanging out with Matthew and all of his buddies, who were all disreputable sinners.
All savages. Which crazy.
Yeah. And so then, I love how the Message version of the Bible puts it. It says that you guys are looking at this whole thing the wrong way. Christ says he came to invite outsiders, not coddle insiders. In most versions, it'll say, like, I didn't come for the healthy, I came for the sick. But really, what starts to happen, if we're not careful, and again, that's kind of why I left an area of the country. I felt like I was starting to become an insider that acted like an insider. And I didn't want that in my life. Now, that was on me. That wasn't on the church or the culture. It was on me. But I think if we're not careful, is like in my position as a spiritual leader, a pastor, we can start forgetting the mission, right? Because we've got this thing that we have to run. And every week there's a Sunday, which means there's services. We do 2 services on Sunday morning, and we got to pump those things out because people are coming, and it can't be bad. And we got to entertain, and so all these things are running through your mind, and then pretty soon you've got a gathering, however big that gathering is. If it's 10 or if it's 50,000, it doesn't matter. You've got these people now. You want to keep these people to keep this thing going, and then so the temptation is to coddle those people and forget about the mission. And
I think the church has to do a better job of things like Matthew. And then I think, and you'd know more about this than I would, but David, for instance, everybody wants to talk about the good things of David. And maybe, David was a terrible guy for most of his life, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, David was also...
The king?
Yeah, King David.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so... why you know another David? He said,
no, I'm just...
Yes.
I'm listening.
Yeah, so David gets, every Sunday school in the country teaches about the great King David. Bible says he's a man after God's own heart. But at the same time, while David was king, whom the story goes that God actually chose him to be king. While king, while he was a spiritual leader, he was wild.
He killed Uriah.
After sleeping with his wife.
David was wild.
And it's important for people to know, like, hey, you don't have to be perfect to be a part of this.
Yeah, those stories don't get brought up a lot in Sunday school, the bad part of what they did, right?
Not that they should in Sunday school, but as we
come on, boys and girls. So I think, if we're not careful, the walls of the church end up being there to keep people out instead of welcoming people in, and it's a very easy temptation to get into. I am constantly asking God in prayer, God, don't ever let me become an insider, right? I don't ever want to think like an insider. I don't ever want to create an environment where people on the outside come in, or that maybe they feel like they're on the outside. They come in, and then when they leave, they still feel like they're on the outside. I would say, this is kind of a strong phrase used, But I can't think of anything more anti-Christ than that.
Yeah.
Because it seemed like the church leaders of the day only wanted to hang out with other good people.
Yeah.
And Jesus seemed to be hanging out only with the people that the church leaders didn't want to be hanging out with.
Yeah, it's crazy because growing up, you talk about you had like Chuck.
Yeah.
So we had this dude named Scott. And we were bad, gang banging, young. You know, we were just savages. But one day we had walked by this church and they was playing just like touch football or something.
Yeah.
And a lot of the kids knew us just because we all played football, you know. So we walking by, me and my boys had to be like 20 of us. He's like, "Oh, Bez, y'all should come play football." He's like, "Nah, I'm not coming to that youth group," you know. So we all left, came back. They still outside playing. So we was like, "All right, we run a game with them." And then this little short Asian dude named Scott Fukushima, he's probably like 5'6", but cool to tell you, he was there and he was like, "Oh, it's time to go in." He was like, "For what?" He's like, "For youth group."
Yeah.
Nah. So we leave and we come back. We start going back every Wednesday, you know, just playing, whether it was football outside or if it was raining or whatever, we going to play basketball. We start bringing all the hood kids. And
that's great.
I remember at first, and their youth group, before we came, it was like 8 kids. We had it up to like 70, 80 a day. And I'm talking savage kids. I mean, once boys bringing guns to church. Oh yeah, no games. Like, I mean, like seriously, these boys were strapped, knives on them, guns, whatever. But in the church, they were super respectful.
Yeah,
you know. And one day they invited us to Sunday. Shit, we ain't been to church on Sunday in a minute, you know. So we all get the Sunday service, and we took up the whole one side, just all of us.
That's great.
And I remember at first that church did not want, and they were the whitest white church, you know, like in that area that we were, that neighborhood that we was walking through. But they ain't want us at that church at all. Yeah. Like, couldn't stand us. And I remember,
you could feel it.
Oh yeah. And they would tell us like, we don't really want you intermingling with our kids because we know how
that influence.
It was like, and don't get me wrong, they wasn't wrong. You know, they weren't wrong. But at the same time, that kind of got us to points like, what we even coming for? You know what I mean? Like, what y'all, or why do you even consider yourself a church if you're not going to have people in like us? You know what I mean? Because to be honest, we should be on target. You know what I mean? Like, we fucking up.
That's
our
right.
whole lives are, the only thing we care about is this violence and whatever. And we love that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, and whether we know it or not, subconsciously, we looking for y'all. We hoping that y'all show us something different. We just don't know it. Or we wouldn't be coming. We
why would you come? Right.
We're not coming on Sunday service because we play football on Wednesday. You know what I mean? Like, something else is kind of drawing us. And now y'all need to help us either find that or we back outside.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but eventually they warmed up to us, ended up loving us, and, you know, they would invite us over to their houses, and, you know,
that's how it should be, right?
And it was jumping. And, you know, if it wasn't for those inviting people, I mean, probably none of them ever would have probably wanted to keep going to the youth group or, you know, anything like that. So
our church started. We invited the what's the men's group where if they get locked up, they come out and it's like a home in Duluth.
Teen Challenge?
Yeah.
Minnesota Adult Teen Challenge.
Yeah, we sort of have Teen Challenge come to our church.
Yeah.
And at first, same thing. You could tell some people are maybe a little uncomfortable with it. But to be honest, those were the funnest services because after each song, you know, normally a song ends and then they start a new one. When them guys were in there, song end, they're clapping, cheering. You're like, oh yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But that's who you should be targeting.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened. The crazy thing is, it's a 2,000-year-old problem, right? So Jesus faced the exact same crap about. If you just read the life of Jesus in those 4 books, is it Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you will see that Jesus had serious confrontational moments. There was a lot of them, but they were always with church leaders.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was crazy.
It's the one theme that goes through the people that had no faith. They never had problems. Not all of them followed him. Not all of them believed in him. But there wasn't this tension.
Yeah.
The biggest problems Jesus had was with the established church of the day because they were separated. They had placed themselves on a level that no one else could get to, and it became extremely exclusive. And Christ, the message of Christ is, you are all welcome, but you're not all just welcome. You all belong first. So Matthew didn't have this unbelievable like conversion moment before Christ asked him to be a disciple. He asked him to be a disciple first. Like, come on, follow me. Now that was Matthew's choice if he did or didn't. But he did. His life was radically changed by Christ. But it wasn't, let me just wait and see how this pans out. And get your life cleaned up, Matthew. I'll be over in Galilee. When you get cleaned up, you come find me. It wasn't that at all. It was just the opposite. And I think sometimes we just lose the plot. Right? And it can happen in churches of 8 people. It can happen in churches of 100,000, where we just lose the plot on why we started the Philippines. I'm convinced that I don't know of a pastor that starts a church with wrong motives. But I think some get there. Unfortunately, get there, right? It's all the same motive. We all are doing it for the same reason, right? And that's to reach people.
And different churches can go about it in different ways, too. Because in Matthew, part of that was, hey, here's the rules for your church. But there might be a different set of rules for a different church because you have different people, different personalities that you're trying to reach.
Yeah, and I'm very aware. I'm not for everybody. Our church isn't for everybody. But there's this writer in the New Testament named Paul. He uses this really great analogy about like a physical body, and then like what he calls the body of Christ. And just like our bodies, we've got an ear is different than a nose, but the ear can't say to the nose, I don't need you because I'm an ear. We're not into noses. Paul paints this picture that though it's one body, it looks different reasons and different uses for everyone. So I think I kind of view churches that way, that our church is going to be, like, I love our church. That was me and Lindsay's dream. We wanted to lead a church that we would attend if we weren't pastoring it, and we worked very hard to do that. But that doesn't mean everyone's going to want to come. Right? I think I'm funny, but a lot of people don't. So,
I hate Pastor Dan.
And that's
why making corny jokes.
Well, that could definitely be said. But there's going to be a church down the road with the same mission and the same dream, and they just do it differently. And my hope is that each church sees that and each person realizes, hey, I know you don't like it over there. You don't like the vibe of it. You think the music's too loud, or you don't like hymns, and whatever it is, you can find somewhere that fits you if the mission's right. That's the hope.
For sure.
And I like hymns. I'm a hymn guy. Our church doesn't do hymns, but
and our church doesn't do hymns either, or they do modern versions of them, or we'll bust them out and Christmas and Easter or whatever, right? But there's some great churches in town that do have great hymns, and so I think that's. I mean, how lame would it be if we were just all the same, just as individuals? So how lame would it be if all the churches were the same? God likes diversity. It's kind of how I feel about it.
So, how long were you at the church that you came to faith to before you had the opportunity to go to Hermantown Church?
I was gone. I left here for like 22 years. I was gone. Is that what you're asking?
No. So when you came back to town, you said the opportunity came up for you.
Oh, yeah, no. I was living in Florida that whole time.
Oh, okay, got it.
So it was a long distance conversation. We'd come up like in July, school's out, we'd come visit. I mean, July in Duluth, there is no better place anywhere.
It's perfect.
It's the best. So, but we would come up, kids are out of school, all the grandparents are up here, so we would spend time, we had a blast together. We'd be gone for like a month. I'd take like a whole month, because we didn't really travel throughout the year.
Got it.
So we'd take a month, we'd come up here, and then that's how the conversation started.
Okay.
I visited with the founding pastor of the church. That conversation kind of started. But I had my church, so I went back, and it was emails and phone calls.
But was the church you came to faith to, the Hermantown Church?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
So, and I'll be honest, so this may sound a little bit out there, and sometimes I don't tell the story a lot, just because it doesn't really, it's not a really key part of the story. It's more of a personal part of the story. But I'd come home randomly. It's only about a 12-hour drive. It's not crazy. So I'd come home just for a weekend sometimes from Tulsa to Duluth. And I was driving by the building, which is now the church I pastor, but I was driving by, and I really felt like, and I don't know that I had the words to describe it then, but I really felt internally something tell me I was going to be pastoring that church one day. But I just, part of that was, well, I'm going to probably pastor one day. That'd be kind of cool. So I just chalked it up to that. Yeah. And then, it was a long time. 22 years later, it actually ended up happening. But yeah, I came to faith in that church. Yeah. And that's where Chuck was and all those guys. Then gone for 22 years. And then that last year, it was almost like a corresponding conversation, back and forth. When is the right time? Do we really want to leave this? What was happening at this bar was incredible.
That sounds like Pez's voice.
Yeah, I
really loved it.
I'm telling you, it was
I'd have had a ball.
Incredible what was going on there. So we didn't need to leave. I could still be there leading that church today, right? And so, but there was, again, there's something going on inside of me. Like, I think this is it. We tried to move back a couple times just because I wanted to be, we felt it in us. And it just, it wasn't time. Is all I can say. It wasn't time. So got that last call. I think this is going to happen. Right. And so we were extremely excited. I mean, our parents were everyone was pumped. And so then here we come. We packed up and gone for 22 years, moved back, and we moved in right about when school was starting. So we were sprinting.
Full go.
And I feel like we've been sprinting for about 5 years. I feel like we haven't had even tapped on the brakes in about 5 years. So so we've been back. I've been back in the community for 5 years.
And then how did the congregation, how was it being received?
Yeah, so the really great part was this wasn't my first transition, so I kind of knew what to expect. I took that church in the bar had already started, and I had come in when it was smaller. And so I was like, oh man, I took some notes, you know what I mean? Like, I took some notes. This is what's going to happen if I ever leave here. So walking into it, I kind of knew what to expect. I knew there'd be people that were, nobody in that church asked for me to, get this. We know this guy down in Florida. It wasn't like that, we went through a process and prayer and voting in the board and all of the stuff that you have to do. But it was a huge change for that church. And we went right into COVID. So, I don't know coming out of, did that help us with the transition and hurt us? Anyways, it was wild. It was 5 months after that. We opened the door to our house. 5 months later, COVID hits. It was wild. Wow. So that transition was interesting. And I think, I'll say this. I tried to lead with as much understanding and grace as possible to a group of people that probably didn't want change. But I really, really, really had to be genuinely me. I am really terrible, and I despise fakeness. And so I don't have a good preacher voice. Who I am right now on this is, you come by my church, that's it. I'm not good at it. I'm not a good actor. So I could not try to fit into the mold of the church. And the mold wasn't bad, right? It was good. Church was good. And but I couldn't fit into it and then try to wean the people off of that into me. I just had to be me. So I actually told the board, I said, hey, what I would recommend you guys do is watch a bunch of my sermons from the bar, because I just get to be genuinely me at that bar. I could have cursed on stage. No one would even blinked at it, Not that I did, but I could have. No one would even have thought twice about it. So I got to be like really me on stage. Joke the way I really would have joked. Said what I would really wanted to say. I could say what I really felt about faith and wrestling with it. And there wasn't any weird church judgment in that bar. And I was determined not to go back into that. I'm not going backwards, right? So the church was extremely graceful to me. Now, it's that Minnesota nice thing. I'm sure they all didn't love it.
Yeah, passive as hell. That's all. It's passive. I say that all the time.
But they were nice to me. And so the church has grown exponentially. It's going really well. Yeah. And so the people that were there, there's some people that are attending our church that remember me when I was a 14, 15-year-old kid that are still there. Those are the types of people that keep churches going. Just these faithful, loyal, amazing people. So my dad's name is Dan also. So growing up, I'm Danny. Everyone called me Danny. So these people still call me Danny. I'm a 46-year-old man, but they remember me as a kid, and they have been nothing but unbelievably supportive.
That's cool.
Whatever you need, man. I was a handful, man. All the report cards will not sit still, hyperactivity and all that. So that's how they remember me, and they've been unbelievable to me. So it was a great church for me to walk into.
That's
super fortunate.
My kids always thought it was funny when we went to church and the old ladies would call me Joey.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. And my kids feel the same way. It's pretty comical to them as well.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, NYS just moved into a building that Hermantown Church was gifted.
Yeah.
The best way to say it. Was gifted downtown. So we get to work a lot with y'all.
Yeah.
We're starting to meet some of the members from the church.
Yeah. Which has been great.
It's great, dude. They come in, they immediately come in and see the kids. We got a couple kids who ask for certain people now. Oh, is this guy coming or this lady gonna pop up or whatever? So as I personally get to learn more about, you and then just the Hermantown Church, we're excited to just see what happens with y'all, how y'all continue to grow. I think y'all doing great work, and I'm excited for just the possibility to work close with y'all too.
Yeah, we feel the same way.
Yeah, so it has just been going good, and I don't go to church. But I say, you know what, we gonna come check out a service one of these times.
Yeah, come on.
Just to walk in the building. Probably not stay real long, but a little wave, Daddy.
Yeah.
But
so that's a pretty cool outreach you have.
Yeah.
What other things do you guys like? What's part of your outreach? Maybe.
So the Duluth Dream Center came. So because I grew up in this community, I know about the Hillside, right? And we felt like, so this is kind of going back to what was talking about before. Why are we even here? Why does this church even exist? And if Sunday morning is the point of church, I told Lindsay early on, I said, if church becomes the point of church, I'm out. There's plenty of other things that I can do with my life. And so when we moved back, our real heart was we don't have an option. We're going to reach the city. We're not just going to have Sunday morning services, which is great. I love Sundays. Yeah. But if the church starts to exist for Sunday morning church, you should just close your doors, right? So we started praying. My first board meeting, I said, guys, I don't know what we need to do here, but we've got to be in the Hillside somehow, some way. That's 5 years ago. Somehow, some way, we've got to be down there. And we cannot stay in our building. And that doesn't mean that other parts of the community don't need us yet, right? Or won't need us eventually. But we've got to pick somewhere. Let's go there first. So we just, as a church leadership team, we just started praying and talking and praying and talking. And then, so this First Presbyterian Church building was gifted to us. We renamed the facility the Duluth Dream Center. And it exists, 3rd Avenue East and 2nd Street, to reach that community in whatever ways that are needed. We're, as a church, we take our cues from Christ, and Christ was about meeting the needs of the people that were right around him. So that's what we've done. We've partnered with schools, partnered with y'all, and it's new for us, right? We just got it in October. We've been doing backpack stuff and school supplies and some food and winter gear and presents and stuff like that. But I don't know fully where it's going yet. But that facility is going to be a really cool spot for that community, and so all of our, figuratively speaking, all of our attention, our time, and our energy, it's really split between those two things. I see the Dream Center as its own thing, reaching that community. We've got our church up on the hill there. But those two things are not mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. It's not like, well, here's our church thing, and then here's our we help people thing. Mm-hmm. Those things should never be separated. Mm-hmm. In my view, when it comes to a church, faith and serving others mm-hmm. are hand in hand. In fact, one of the things I would say, the same guy Matthew quoted Jesus in the 25th chapter of his book by saying, when you care for others, you're caring for Christ. Mm-hmm. And you can't say you follow Christ if you're not caring for others. Mm-hmm. You can't separate those two things. So how we love others is mm-hmm. how we love God. And so though they're two separate entities, they're an extension of each other mm-hmm. in a big way. So most of our outreach is all pointed at that. For now, we want to establish that. We want the community to know about it. We want the community to benefit from it. We are not there to get from the community. It only exists to serve mm-hmm. the community, which is what's so exciting when we got connected, mm-hmm. because you guys are already doing something incredible at mm-hmm. NYS. And we had a building, yeah. and you had a great thing yeah. going. So it was a great partnership.
Yeah, it was perfect.
Right? Together. And
yeah.
so we're hoping for more of that. We've got this great building, and we've got some things that we're doing, mm-hmm. But we're there for the community. We're not there to take from the community. So, yeah, it's been pretty great. It's been short, right? It's only been a few months, but we're rolling.
Yeah. I know it is. It's rolling pretty good. Yeah. The amount of people we see come through the Dream Center now is crazy. I mean, even just our numbers alone are like skyrocketing. You know, we're
it's
pushing.
A perfect location.
It is.
It's perfect.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And just I think what it's going to grow into is going to be huge.
Yeah.
Just that resource center and safe space for community, all of it. I mean,
that's what we want. We've only just begun there. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So no, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then I'll ask as we wrap up, the question that I ask everybody is, if you could say something to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh, that's great. And I've been asked this question before, and I never answer the same
mm-hmm.
way. So today I will say, be more patient. Mm-hmm. I was not. And I'm terrible at it. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean that in a way like good things come to those who wait kind mm-hmm. of thing, but just be more patient, because I feel like I'm really bad at enjoying the moment, mm-hmm. celebrating the moment. Yep. I'm always pushing on to the next thing. But if I had a little bit more patience in my
mm-hmm.
life, I think I'd celebrate a little bit more. I'd appreciate the people around me a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'd like bask in the moment a little better. So yeah, be
mm-hmm.
patient.
Yeah, that's a good lesson. Honestly, it's something I've even learned just as recently as, becoming our own nonprofit.
Yeah.
It's like there are some things, especially like grants, that take so long, or they get so behind, or we got a project we want to do, and I talk with the staff, and sometimes they just like, all right, what are we waiting on now? And it's like, look, I ain't got the answers. I just know it's going to happen. It's going to come.
Yeah.
And just waiting it out. And when it finally does happen, you're like, damn. Yeah. You do enjoy it a little bit more. It's like, damn, I've really been waiting on this.
Yes.
This is where all my time and energy been going, so it is. That's a good lesson, and I think something we can all just continue to use more of.
Yeah, I need it.
Yeah, so.
And not just my younger self, my now self. I need it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, once again, I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I loved it. Thanks for having me. I appreciate
it. Yeah, a lot of fun. And thank y'all for listening. And like always, like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you next time.